Welcome to Klepper's Corner, today in history, where we dig into the anniversaries that remind us how weird, violent, and surprising the past really is. It's October 12th, a day where discovery, conflict, culture, and memory all tangled together, like Thanksgiving dinner at an in-law's house with too many opinions. Segment 1, a new world that was never ours. Let's start with the big one, 1492. Yes, Columbus, but not the he discovered America and it was all good version you heard in grade school. On October 12, 1492, after about 33 days at sea in 3 ships, a lookout named Rodrigo de Triana yelled, "Land!" though Columbus later claimed he saw a light earlier so he could get the royal pension. Side note, already the dude was litigating his own fame. He landed on an island the locals called Guanahani. Columbus promptly renamed it San Salvador. That's one of the earliest recorded acts of colonial branding. We came, we renamed, we own it. He claimed the land and its people for Spain, even though the local communities had their own names, lives, systems. He believed he'd landed in Asia, which is why native peoples got called Indians. Columbus just never got the map update memo. The people he first met were Taino, from the Arawakan linguistic group. These weren't savages in need of civilization. They were farmers, navigators, societies with laws, religion, children, stories. But Columbus's journal had this chilling line: "I could conquer the whole of them with 50 men and govern them as I pleased." That's not anthropological curiosity, that's a to-do list. Fast forward, when he returned on his second voyage, things went from awkward to brutal. On Hispaniola, Columbus set up a tribute system. Every person over 14 had to bring gold every 3 months, or else. Punishment? Hands cut off, death by bleeding, slavery, disease, starvation. Within decades, where hundreds of thousands lived, only a few hundred remained. Entire civilizations erased. That's not accident, that's devastation. But Columbus also triggered the Columbian Exchange. Plants, animals, diseases all flew across the oceans. Indigenous populations having no immunity to smallpox, measles, influenza, the mortality rates were catastrophic, often estimated up to 90%. Meanwhile, the Old World got potatoes, corn, cassava, chili peppers, chocolate, tobacco. Europe and Asia got a calorie boost. Populations boomed. Crops shifted diets forever. And at the heart of it, unequal transfer. Disease and guns didn't travel both ways evenly. So October 12th is a pivot date, the moment hemispheres collided, the moment domination and exchange became the norm. Segment 2, Prost, from royal wedding to beer mecca. Let's pivot from conquest to celebration, because not every October 12th is doom. In 1810, in Bavaria, citizens gathered to celebrate the wedding of Crown Prince Ludwig to Princess Therese. They held festivities on a field outside Munich, which got named Theresienwiese, Theresa's Meadow. And voila, Oktoberfest was born. A horse race, feasting, beers, music. People liked it, so they repeated it. Over time, it turned into an agricultural fair, a carnival, and eventually, beer halls with giant steins and lederhosen. The horse race got dropped in 1960, but the beer stayed. Eventually, the city formally took over. The breweries paraded in, and the mayor tapped the first keg. Ozaptis. What started as a royal wedding became a global cultural export, German stereotypes included. It shows how culture gets repurposed. A local wedding turns into a tourism engine, a beer festival, a branding identity. The same date that marks colonization also marks beer diplomacy across the world. Segment 3, sacrifice, martyrs, memory. October 12th is also a date of sacrifice. In 1915, British nurse Edith Cavell was executed by a German firing squad in Belgium. She had helped about 200 Allied soldiers escape behind enemy lines while operating a Red Cross hospital. When caught, she didn't deny it. She said she helped. Her last words, "Patriotism is not enough. I must have no hatred or bitterness to anyone." Her death became an Allied rallying cry, a symbol of humanitarian martyrdom. Governments plastered posters, "She died for us." Then we go further back. October 12th, 1870. Robert E. Lee died. After the Civil War, Lee, now president of a college, counseled reconciliation. But his legacy was mythified into the lost cause. He became an icon of Southern virtue and sacrifice, recasting a war for slavery into a noble struggle over states' rights. His death on October 12th became one more date in the calendar of Confederate memory. So on one date, we have a nurse executed for helping people escape war and a general mythologized by those defending a defeated slaveholding regime. Those juxtapositions, empathy, cruelty, memory, are part of what October 12th asks us to reckon with. Segment 4, Rockets, Shoes, and the Theater of the Cold War. October 12th also gives us some of the Cold War's most surreal and telling moments. In 1964, the Soviets launched Voskhod 1. It carried 3 men at once, a first. They flew without spacesuits in a cramped capsule that had removed the ejection seat to make room. It was dangerous, basically space Russian roulette. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Nikita Khrushchev was deposed in a coup mid-mission. The cosmonauts orbited cluelessly, thinking the Kremlin had their backs, only to land to a different regime. The mission spoke to how much politics drove technology, even at the expense of human safety. Backtrack to 1960, at the UN. Khrushchev, frustrated by a Filipino delegate's criticism, took off his shoe and hammered it on the desk. That, folks, is diplomacy in translation. I'm going to show you who's boss, shoe style. It became a Cold War meme. And then in 1986, Reagan and Gorbachev met in Reykjavik. They nearly struck a deal to dismantle all nuclear weapons, but Reagan insisted on keeping Star Wars, the missile defense plan. Talks collapsed. At the time, it seemed like failure, but historians now see Reykjavik as a hinge moment. For the first time, total disarmament was on the table. We came close. No handshake, but the crack in the arms race had formed. October 12th thus threads together space danger, UN theatrics, and the brink of nuclear peace. That is the theater and tragedy of the Cold War on one date. Segment 5, Births, Deaths, and Legacies. On this date, we also honor creators and cultural transformers, born and gone. Born October 12th, Ralph Vaughan Williams, 1872. British composer who mined folk music, weaving English tradition into symphonies and pastoral soundscapes. Luciano Pavarotti, 1935. King of the high seas, whose voice and charisma brought opera to stadiums and millions of non-opera people. Dick Gregory, 1932. Comedian turned civil rights voice. He used humor to critique racism, war, injustice. He bridged entertainment and activism at a time when that was risky. Died October 12th. John Denver, 1997. Singer of Take Me Home Country Roads, Rocky Mountain High, environmental lover. Died piloting an experimental plane. Wilt Chamberlain, 1999. Statistical monster of basketball. Scored 100 points in a game. Averaged 50 in a season. Changed how we think about athletic possibility. So in one date, you have musicians, activists, athletes, people who remade culture, meaning, possibility. So what do we do with October 12th? It's not just a list of events. It's a contest over memory. Columbus has been reevaluated. Columbus Day evolved partly as a gesture to Italian Americans, asserting their place in America. But over time, people began asking, who are we excluding when we celebrate conquest? In many places, Columbus Day was replaced or shared with Indigenous Peoples Day. In 2021, President Biden recognized Indigenous Peoples Day. It's a battle over which stories get center stage, the conqueror or the people conquered. Oktoberfest reminds us that traditions can be invented, repurposed, sold. We can transform tragedy into festivity, or festivity into industry. But also ask, whose culture? What's being commodified? Edith Cavell and Robert E. Lee, two people who died on October 12th, but whose legacies were used for very different moral and political ends. The stories we tell about sacrifice, whose suffering we memorialize, are deeply political. The space race, Cold War theatrics, shots of nuclear brinksmanship, those show us how political competition produces spectacle and sometimes peril. The ambition to race to the moon is noble. The rush to win at all costs is dangerous. The shoe-pounding and brink talks show how fragile diplomacy can be when ego and ideology come first. The births and deaths, they remind us that people matter. That art, activism, sport, music, they shape how we see the world. They offer alternative legacies to domination and violence. October 12th is thus not a tidy narrative. It's contradictory, contested, messy. It is encounter of peoples, ecosystems, ideas, memory. It is conflict and creation. It is painful and joyous. It is what we make and remake. So on this October 12th, take a moment. Consider what it means to discover. Are we discovering or overwriting? Consider how we celebrate. Who gets the party? Who pays the cost? Consider memory. Whose story is center stage? And consider always that history is not done. We inherit it, fight over it, reimagine it. Thanks for joining Klepper's Corner today in history. I'll see you next time, unless history shows up early again.